The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Ranger Tom Bradley dropped to his knees at the canyon's edge, his weathered face frozen in disbelief. Before him stood a massive white Brahman bull, its muscular body riddled with angry red puncture wounds, skin swollen from countless venomous strikes. Yet despite its injuries, the bull remained standing, a living shield between a group of trapped calves and hundreds of bark scorpions swarming the canyon floor. "Sweet Lord Almighty," whispered Dr. Fletcher beside him, her scientific composure crumbling as the bull deliberately stomped on approaching scorpions, its legs trembling with each movement. The bull's dark eyes, somehow still alert despite what must have been excruciating pain, met Tom's gaze with an intelligence that sent chills down his spine. "In 40 years on this job," Tom murmured, "I've never seen anything like this." It defies everything we thought we knew. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Jack Whitman's weathered hands gripped the worn wooden fence post as he surveyed his land at dawn. 65 years of life had etched deep lines into his face, each one a testament to the harsh realities of ranching in the Arizona desert. The Whitman Ranch had been in his family for 3 generations, but now, like many small operations, it teetered on the edge of financial ruin. The ranch spread across 200 acres of Sonoran desert, the modest herd of Brahman cattle representing Jack's entire life's work. 5 years ago, he'd shared this burden with his son Lucas and his wife Sarah. Now, both were gone. Sarah to cancer 2 years past, and Lucas in a truck accident on a rain-slicked highway while transporting cattle. "Morning, old friend," Jack muttered as a massive white bull approached the fence. Maverick was an impressive animal. 2,100 pounds of muscle with a distinctive hump, loose skin hanging from his dewlap, and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to understand every word Jack said. The bull had been Lucas's pride and joy, hand-raised from a calf. Worth close to $50,000 as breeding stock, Maverick represented both Jack's greatest asset and his most treasured connection to his son. Jack's neighbor, Bill Foster, had offered to buy Maverick repeatedly. "A man your age shouldn't be messing with a bull that size," he'd said just yesterday. "Especially not with the bank breathing down your neck." The ranch house stood 100 yards away, a modest single-story structure with peeling white paint and a front porch where Jack's coffee sat cooling. From there he could see Red Rock Canyon cutting through the eastern edge of his property. The recent monsoon rains had transformed the usually docile landscape, flash floods carving new paths through the ancient stone. Inside the house, last month's foreclosure notice sat on the kitchen table beside the framed photo of Jack, Sarah, and Lucas at the county fair, standing proudly beside Maverick after winning the blue ribbon. The bank had given him 30 more days. After that, the land that had witnessed his greatest joys and deepest sorrows would belong to someone else. "Mr. Whitman? Jack?" a voice called from the driveway as a dusty pickup truck approached. Ranger Tom Bradley, an old friend who'd grown up alongside Jack, stepped out. At 58, Tom's face carried its own map of sorrows, including the recent loss of his wife to the same cancer that took Sarah. "Tom," Jack nodded, extending a calloused hand. "What brings you out this way?" "Just checking how folks fared after that flash flood. That new cut through Red Rock looks nasty." Tom's eyes drifted to Maverick. "How's the old champion doing?" Jack's face darkened. "Something's not right with him." "Been disappearing every afternoon for the past week. Comes back all cut up and exhausted." He gestured to faint red marks visible on Maverick's white hide. "Thought he might be fighting with Foster's bulls, but the fence between our properties is solid." Tom frowned, stepping closer to examine the wounds. "These don't look like horn marks, Jack. Almost like—" He paused, squinting at the punctures. "Like what?" Jack asked. "Like stings," Tom replied. "Lots of them. The following afternoon, Jack leaned against his truck, watching the corral with narrowed eyes. It was just past 2 o'clock when Maverick began his now familiar routine. The massive bull paced along the fence, his powerful muscles twitching beneath his white hide. Jack had repaired and reinforced the corral fence just that morning, using the sturdiest posts and tightest wire he could afford. "Let's see you get through that," Jack muttered, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos. Maverick stopped his pacing and stared directly at Jack, as if considering his words. Then, with a deliberate movement that sent chills down Jack's spine, the bull backed up several paces, lowered his massive head, and charged. The reinforced fence shuddered but held. Maverick backed up again and repeated the charge with greater force. On the third attempt, the wooden posts splintered and the wire gave way. "Damn it all!" Jack slammed his thermos down on the truck hood. "That's 2 months' worth of fence repairs." Maverick paused, his dark eyes meeting Jack's for a brief moment. There was something in that gaze, something that reminded Jack painfully of Lucas. Then the bull turned and trotted purposefully toward the eastern edge of the property, in the direction of Red Rock Canyon. Jack grabbed his rifle from the truck rack, not to harm Maverick but for protection in snake country, and followed at a distance. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as he tracked the bull's unmistakable hoofprints across the dusty terrain. Sweat soaked through his shirt, and his arthritic knee throbbed with each step. "Too old for this nonsense," he grumbled, but pressed on. The tracks led directly to the canyon, where recent floods had carved new passages through the ancient red stone. Jack paused at the rim, watching as Maverick navigated a narrow trail down into the canyon with surprising agility for an animal his size. The bull disappeared around a bend, leaving Jack with a decision: follow the dangerous path or turn back. "Your mama always said I was too stubborn for my own good," Jack said aloud, thinking of Sarah as he began his careful descent. The path was treacherous, loose stones sliding beneath his boots. By the time he reached the canyon floor, Maverick had vanished from sight. Jack followed the fresh tracks deeper into the labyrinth of stone, the walls rising higher on either side, casting long shadows across his path. The air grew noticeably cooler as he progressed, the canyon narrowing until he had to turn sideways to squeeze through certain passages. The silence was broken only by his labored breathing and the occasional skittering of small creatures in the shadows. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, Jack heard it. A low, rumbling sound that he recognized immediately as Maverick's warning bellow. Quickening his pace as much as the terrain would allow, he rounded a final bend and froze. There stood Maverick in a small clearing facing away from Jack. The bull's massive body was tense, his head lowered in an aggressive posture. On the ground around him, Jack could make out the distinctive shapes of Arizona bark scorpions, dozens of them, their stingers raised and poised to strike. Several had already found their mark. Fresh puncture wounds dotted Maverick's legs and underbelly. "Good Lord," Jack whispered. As his eyes adjusted to the shadows, Jack realized what had drawn the bull to this dangerous place. Behind Maverick, trapped in a deep rock pocket created by the flood, were several calves, 5 or 6 from what he could see, huddled together in obvious distress. The flood must have swept them in, and the receding water had left them stranded with no way to climb the smooth rock walls. One of the calves, a light-colored male with distinctive markings, Jack recognized immediately as one of Maverick's offspring from the previous breeding season, but the others were from different bloodlines, even different breeds. They weren't all Mavericks. The bull stamped his front hoof, crushing several scorpions beneath him. He shifted position, deliberately drawing more of the creatures toward himself and away from the trapped calves. Each sting caused Maverick to flinch, but he held his ground. Jack stood transfixed, unable to process what he was witnessing. Maverick was using his own body as a shield, enduring painful stings to protect not just his own offspring, but all the trapped calves. The behavior defied everything Jack knew about cattle. Bulls protected their territory and sometimes their direct offspring. But this was something else entirely. A memory flashed in Jack's mind. Lucas, at 17, sitting on the corral fence, bottle-feeding a sickly white bull calf, Maverick. "He's special, Dad," Lucas had insisted. "Look at his eyes. He understands things." Jack had laughed it off then, attributing his son's words to youthful attachment. Now, watching Maverick deliberately position himself between danger and the trapped calves, Jack wasn't laughing. The situation was dire. The scorpions were numerous, and with each passing minute more venom entered Maverick's system. The calves were dehydrated and weakening, and Jack, alone with only a rifle and a canteen, had no way to safely extract any of them. Backing carefully away, Jack retreated up the canyon path. He needed help, and he needed it fast. As he climbed back toward his truck, his mind raced through possibilities. The local veterinarian wouldn't have equipment for a canyon rescue. The fire department was 50 miles away in Tucson. Then he remembered Tom's visit that morning. The rangers would have rescue equipment, experience with difficult terrain, and knowledge of dealing with venomous creatures. Jack reached his truck and grabbed his cell phone from the glove compartment, praying for a signal this far out. One bar, it would have to do. "Tom Bradley," answered the familiar voice after 3 rings. "Tom, it's Jack. I need help. It's Maverick and some calves. You're not going to believe what I'm seeing." Sunset painted the canyon walls in fiery hues as Jack led Tom back down the treacherous path. The ranger's truck was loaded with basic rescue equipment, ropes, a collapsible stretcher, first aid supplies, but Tom had insisted on assessing the situation before calling in a full team. "You sure about what you saw, Jack?" Tom asked, his voice low. Bulls aren't exactly known for their altruistic behavior. Jack's jaw tightened. "I know what I saw. Been raising cattle for 40 years. They rounded the final bend, and Tom stopped abruptly. "Good God Almighty," he whispered. The scene had deteriorated in the hours since Jack's departure. Maverick still stood guard, but his powerful legs trembled with each movement. Scores of dead scorpions lay crushed around him, yet more emerged from crevices in the rock walls, drawn by the distress of their fallen kin. The bull's white hide was now marred with hundreds of angry red puncture wounds, each surrounded by swollen tissue. Yet despite his obvious suffering, Maverick maintained his position between the scorpions and the trapped calves. He acknowledged the men's arrival with a glance but didn't move from his protective stance. Tom unclipped the radio from his belt. "I've seen enough. We need a full rescue team and a wildlife vet." He stepped back toward the path for better reception, speaking rapidly into the radio. Jack approached the edge of the scorpion-infested area, close enough to get a better view of the calves. They were lying down now, conserving their energy, clearly dehydrated after days without water. The light-colored calf, Maverick's offspring, raised its head weakly at Jack's presence. "Hang on there, little ones," Jack said softly. "Help's coming." Maverick shifted position, crushing several more scorpions that ventured too close to the calves. The movement cost him. Jack could see fresh stings on the bull's legs. Yet the massive animal remained standing, his dark eyes alert despite what must have been excruciating pain. Tom returned, his expression grim. "Team's on the way, bringing Dr. Fletcher with them. She's a wildlife biologist who consults for us. But Jack—" He hesitated. "It'll take them at least 2 hours to get here and set up. With the amount of venom that bulls absorbed—" He didn't need to finish. They both knew Maverick might not last that long. Jack stared at the bull that his son had raised from a calf, the animal that now represented his final connection to Lucas. "He can't die, Tom. Not like this." Tom placed a weathered hand on Jack's shoulder. "We'll do everything we can, but you need to prepare yourself." The memory came unbidden. Lucas at 14, tears streaming down his face as he sat vigil beside a fevered bull calf. "He's going to make it, Dad," Lucas had insisted. Maverick's a fighter. Against all odds, the calf had survived, growing into the magnificent bull now fighting his own desperate battle. "What if we create a diversion?" Jack suggested suddenly. "Draw the scorpions away somehow?" Tom shook his head. "Too risky. These bark scorpions are among the most venomous in North America. We need specialized equipment to handle them safely." Jack watched helplessly as Maverick stomped another approaching scorpion, the bull's movements becoming visibly slower. Time was running out. The sound of approaching vehicles reached them from above, the rescue team arriving at the canyon rim. Minutes later, a woman in ranger uniform navigated the path toward them, followed by two assistants carrying equipment packs. "Dr. Fletcher," Tom greeted her. "Thanks for coming so quickly." Abigail Fletcher was in her early 40s, her practical ponytail streaked with premature gray, her expression serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. She took in the scene with clinical detachment until her gaze fell on Maverick. For a brief moment, surprise registered on her face before her professional demeanor returned. "Fascinating," she murmured, keeping a safe distance from the scorpion-infested area. "The bull is exhibiting protective behavior toward unrelated calves. This contradicts established understanding of bovine behavior patterns." "With all due respect, Doctor," Jack said tightly, "that fascinating bull has a name, Maverick, and he's dying to protect those calves." Dr. Fletcher's expression softened slightly. "I understand your attachment, Mr. Whitman, but we need to approach this scientifically if we're going to save both the bull and the calves." While the rescue team set up floodlights at the canyon rim, Dr. Fletcher observed Maverick's behavior, taking notes and occasionally photographing specific interactions. Jack paced impatiently, watching the bull's condition deteriorate by the minute. "It's just instinct," Dr. Fletcher said, almost to herself. "A misdirected paternal response." "Instinct?" Jack stopped pacing. "Instinct would be protecting his own calf, maybe. Not standing there taking hundreds of stings to protect others. That's not instinct, Doctor. That's something else entirely." Before she could respond, one of the rescue team members called down from above. "We've got the extraction equipment ready. But there's another problem. Weather Service just issued a flash flood warning, storm system moving in from the southwest." Tom checked his watch. "How long?" 3 hours, maybe 4. Dr. Fletcher surveyed the canyon walls. "If this area flooded recently, it will flood again. We need to move quickly." She turned to her assistants. "Prepare the anti-venom kit. We'll need to stabilize the bull before attempting to move him." Jack stepped closer to her. "You have something that can help him?" "Possibly." "We carry antivenom for emergency human exposure. It's not formulated for cattle, but the principle is similar. The challenge will be administering it safely." For the first time since discovering Maverick's plight, Jack felt a flicker of hope. He watched as the rescue team lowered more equipment into the canyon, specialized protective suits, animal stretchers, crates for the calves. One of Dr. Fletcher's assistants approached, carrying a dart gun. "Tranquilizers ready, Doctor," she nodded. "We'll need to sedate him to administer the antivenom and move him safely." "No," Jack interjected firmly. "You dart him now, he'll collapse right onto those scorpions. And who'll protect the calves while he's down?" Dr. Fletcher considered this. "You're right. We need to clear the scorpions first, then extract the calves, then treat the bull." The team donned protective suits and began carefully clearing the scorpions using long-handled tools, working their way toward the trapped calves. Throughout the process, Maverick remained standing, his dark eyes tracking their movements with what Jack could only describe as understanding. As they reached the rock pocket where the calves were trapped, Jack noticed something that stopped his breath. On the smooth stone wall behind the calves, barely visible in the artificial light, were scratch marks, deep gouges in the rock made by horn and hoof. Maverick had tried to dig them out before resigning himself to standing guard. Jack turned to Dr. Fletcher, who was now close enough to see the marks herself. "Still think it's just instinct?" Her scientific certainty wavered visibly. "I've never seen anything like this," she admitted. With the immediate area cleared of scorpions, the team prepared to extract the first calf. They lowered a specialized harness into the rock pocket, but the weakened calves were too frightened to approach it. "They need to trust us," Tom said. "But they're too scared." Jack looked at Maverick, an idea forming. "Let me try something." He approached the bull cautiously, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Maverick, old friend, we're here to help them. You understand that, don't you?" The bull's dark eyes met his, and for a moment Jack felt a connection that transcended the usual boundaries between man and animal. Maverick took a shaky step toward the rock pocket, then another, positioning himself near the harness. To everyone's astonishment, the light-colored calf, his offspring, rose on wobbly legs and approached, seemingly encouraged by Maverick's presence. "I'll be damned," Tom whispered. With Maverick's apparent cooperation, the team managed to secure the first calf in the harness. As they began lifting it to safety, a distant rumble echoed through the canyon, thunder from the approaching storm. The race against time had begun in earnest. Night descended on Red Rock Canyon as the rescue operation intensified. Powerful floodlights cast harsh shadows across the ancient stone, transforming the rescue scene into a dramatic tableau of light and darkness. The first calf had been successfully extracted and was receiving emergency treatment in the mobile veterinary unit at the canyon rim. 4 more remained trapped, their condition deteriorating by the hour. "We need to move faster," Tom urged, checking his weather radar. "That storm's picking up speed. I'm seeing heavy precipitation already hitting Tucson." Jack hadn't left Maverick's side. The massive bull remained standing, though his powerful legs trembled continuously now. The antivenom administered by Dr. Fletcher's team had helped stabilize his condition, but the sheer volume of venom in his system was overwhelming. The normal dosage calculations didn't account for an animal deliberately accumulating hundreds of stings over multiple days. Dr. Fletcher knelt beside a small portable lab station they'd established in a scorpion-free zone of the canyon floor. She frowned at the blood sample results displayed on her tablet. "His organs are showing signs of stress, particularly his kidneys. The antivenom is helping, but at this rate—" She glanced at Jack, her scientific detachment faltering. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitman. We're doing everything we can." Jack nodded grimly. He understood what she wasn't saying. Maverick was dying. The knowledge sat like a stone in his chest, heavy and cold. 5 years after losing Lucas, he was facing the loss of his final connection to his son. "Can I have a moment with him?" Jack asked. "Doctor." Fletcher nodded, signaling her assistants to step back from where they were preparing the harness for the second calf. Jack approached Maverick, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that would have seemed foolish to him just days ago. Now, faced with the bull's extraordinary sacrifice, it felt entirely appropriate. "Lucas always said you were special," Jack said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Should have listened to him more. Seems like I'm always realizing things too late." Maverick's dark eyes fixed on Jack with that uncanny intelligence that had first unsettled, then amazed him. The bull shifted slightly, presenting his massive shoulder as if inviting contact. Jack placed a weathered hand on the warm hide, feeling the powerful muscles trembling beneath. "You've done enough, old friend. More than enough. We'll get them out now. You can rest." As if understanding, Maverick lowered his massive head briefly, then raised it again, gaze fixed on the remaining calves. His message seemed clear. The job wasn't finished. A shout from above interrupted the moment. Movement in the canyon entrance! Water's coming! Tom's radio crackled to life with urgent updates from the team stationed upstream. The flash flood was arriving sooner than predicted, already filling the upper passages of the canyon network. "How long?" Dr. Fletcher demanded. 20 minutes, maybe less, before it reaches this section," came the grim reply. The rescue team mobilized with renewed urgency. 2 technicians descended into the rock pocket to physically lift the remaining calves into the harnesses, abandoning the more time-consuming method of coaxing them voluntarily. The second and third calves were hoisted to safety in quick succession. Dr. Fletcher approached Jack, her expression grave. "Mr. Whitman, we need to sedate Maverick now and prepare him for extraction. If that water reaches us before we get him out." Jack looked at the remaining 2 calves, then at Maverick's weakened but still vigilant form. "Get the calves first," he said firmly. "Jack," Tom interjected, "we may not have time for both." "If we prioritize Maverick, the calves first," Jack repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "It's what he's been fighting for. It's what Lucas would want." Dr. Fletcher studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Let's move, people. 4th calf now." The rescue technicians worked with practiced efficiency, securing the 4th calf in the harness. As it was lifted to safety, the distant rumble of approaching water grew louder, echoing ominously through the canyon. "Last one," Tom announced, helping guide the final calf into position. Suddenly, a massive crash echoed from further up the canyon, followed by the unmistakable roar of rushing water. The flash flood had arrived earlier than even their revised estimates, accelerated by the canyon's unique geography. "Everyone out!" Tom shouted. "Now!" The rescue team scrambled toward the path leading up and out of the canyon. The technician working with the last calf frantically secured the harness, signaling for an emergency extraction. Dr. Fletcher grabbed Jack's arm. "We have to go. There's no time to get Maverick out." Jack looked at the bull, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent communication. "You go," he said, shaking off her grip. "I'm staying with him." "That's suicide, Jack!" Tom shouted over the growing roar of water. The first surge of floodwater appeared around the bend, a churning wall of debris-laden current that would sweep everything in its path. The final calf was lifted clear of the canyon floor, rising rapidly toward safety as the team above responded to the emergency. Jack stood his ground beside Maverick, the reality of his decision settling over him. He thought of Sarah, of Lucas, of the lonely years since their passing. "Guess we're going together, old friend," he murmured to the bull. Maverick's response shocked everyone present. With a sudden surge of strength born of desperation, the massive bull lowered his head and butted Jack. Not aggressively, but with enough force to send the older man stumbling several feet toward the escape path. "Jack!" Tom yelled, having returned despite the danger. He grabbed his friend's arm, pulling him toward safety. Jack resisted, looking back at Maverick. The bull stomped once, decisively, then turned to face the oncoming water, as if making a final stand. "He's telling you to go," Dr. Fletcher said, her scientific skepticism forgotten in the face of what she was witnessing. "Please, Mr. Whitman, don't waste his sacrifice." The water surged closer, its roar now deafening. With a cry of anguish, Jack allowed Tom to pull him toward the path. They scrambled upward, the frigid water already lapping at their boots as they climbed beyond its reach. From higher ground, they watched helplessly as the flood engulfed the canyon floor. Maverick stood firm as the water struck him, his massive form momentarily visible against the torrent before disappearing beneath the churning surface. "No!" Jack cried, lunging forward only to be restrained by Tom and another ranger. "He's gone, Jack," Tom said, his own voice breaking. "I'm sorry." The storm intensified, rain now falling in heavy sheets as the rescue team secured the rescued calves in transport crates. The 5 young animals were frightened but alive. Maverick's days of protection had given them that chance. Dr. Fletcher approached Jack, rain plastering her hair to her face. "Mr. Whitman, I owe you an apology. What I witnessed today—" She shook her head, professional composure momentarily abandoned. "It contradicts everything I've been taught about animal behavior. That wasn't just instinct. That was courage. That was sacrifice." Jack barely heard her, his gaze fixed on the flooded canyon where Maverick had made his last stand. Lightning illuminated the scene in stark flashes, revealing the violent current that continued to surge through the stone passage. "He saved them," Jack said hoarsely. "He saved them all." The drive back to the ranch was conducted in somber silence. The rescued calves had been taken to the veterinary clinic in town, their condition stable but requiring monitoring. Jack sat in Tom's truck, soaked and mud-splattered, grief etching new lines into his weathered face. As they approached the ranch house, the headlights swept across the front yard, briefly illuminating the empty corral where Maverick should have been. Jack closed his eyes against the sight, the finality of the loss washing over him. "I can stay," Tom offered as they pulled up to the house. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." Jack shook his head. "Been alone for years now. One more night won't make a difference." But as he stepped from the truck, something caught his attention, movement near the barn barely visible through the driving rain. Jack squinted, then froze, disbelieving. "Tom," he said, his voice barely audible. "Tell me I'm not seeing things." Tom followed his gaze, then sucked in a sharp breath. "Well, I'll be damned." There, emerging from the shadows, was a massive white form, battered, mud-covered, but unmistakable. Maverick stood in the yard, his once proud stance now a study in exhaustion, his white hide marred with countless wounds and caked with canyon mud. But he was alive. "How in God's name?" Tom whispered. Jack was already moving, crossing the yard with surprising speed for a man his age. He reached Maverick just as the bull's legs finally gave out, the massive animal collapsing to his knees in the mud. "Easy, old friend," Jack said, his voice choked with emotion as he placed a gentle hand on Maverick's mud-caked neck. "I've got you now. You're home." Tom was already on his radio calling for emergency veterinary assistance. Dr. Fletcher would need to know about this impossible survival, the bull that had endured hundreds of scorpion stings and a flash flood to make his way home. As Jack knelt in the mud beside Maverick, rain streaming down his face, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 long years, a sense of purpose, of connection. The bull's dark eye found his, exhausted but still alert, still present. "Lucas was right about you," Jack whispered. "You understand things. Your family." In that moment, watching over Maverick as the storm raged around them, Jack Whitman made a promise to himself and to the memory of his son. This bull, this extraordinary creature who had demonstrated such courage and devotion, would never be sold, never be slaughtered. Whatever it took, Jack would find a way to save both Maverick and the ranch. The rain continued to fall, but for the first time in years, Jack felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Somehow, against impossible odds, Maverick had found his way home. Perhaps Jack could find his way too. Dawn broke over the Whitman Ranch, casting long golden rays across the weathered buildings and dusty yard. Inside the old barn, hastily converted into a makeshift treatment center, Dr. Abigail Fletcher bent over Maverick's massive form, her face etched with concentration as she examined the bull's latest blood work. "I've never seen anything like it," she murmured to Jack, who hadn't left Maverick's side through the night. His system should be completely overwhelmed by the venom, yet his vital organs are functioning. It defies medical explanation. Jack sat on an overturned feed bucket, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. Still, there was a spark in his eyes that had been absent for years. Lucas used to say Maverick was too stubborn to die. The local veterinarian, Dr. Mendez, entered the barn carrying additional IV bags. The county clinic called. All 5 calves are stable and responding well to treatment. He hung the bags on the makeshift stand beside Maverick. Your bull saved them, Mr. Whitman. Another day in that canyon without protection from those scorpions, they wouldn't have made it. Word of Maverick's extraordinary actions had spread rapidly through the small ranching community. Throughout the morning, trucks and cars appeared at the end of the long driveway, their occupants bringing supplies, food, and offers of help. Jack watched through the barn door, bemused by the procession. You've got quite a support system, Dr. Fletcher observed, adjusting Maverick's IV. Jack shook his head. Most of these folks I haven't spoken to in years, not since... He trailed off, the unspoken words hanging in the air. Not since losing Lucas and withdrawing from the world. By midday, the yard outside resembled an impromptu gathering. Tom coordinated the volunteers, directing some to repair the broken corral fence while others helped organize the medical supplies or prepared food for the workers. Jack emerged from the barn briefly, overwhelmed by the show of community support. "Jack!" A familiar voice called from the newest arrival, Bill Foster, Jack's neighbor who had repeatedly offered to buy Maverick. He approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Heard what happened? That bull of yours saved one of my calves that got swept into the canyon." He extended his hand. "I owe you." Jack accepted the handshake, nodding. It was all Maverick. "Local papers here," Tom announced, gesturing toward a car with the Tucson Daily News logo. "And I've had calls from 3 TV stations. Everyone wants the story of the hero bull." Jack frowned. "Don't want a circus?" "Maybe you should consider it," Dr. Fletcher suggested, joining them outside. "Maverick's treatment will be expensive. His kidneys are damaged from the venom. He'll need specialized care." The reality of Jack's financial situation came crashing back. The bank's deadline loomed, and even with Maverick alive, the ranch remained in jeopardy. The bull would require ongoing medical care that Jack simply couldn't afford. "I'll talk to them," he conceded reluctantly. The reporter, a young woman named Jessica Chen, approached with a cameraman in tow. "Mr. Whitman, I'd love to hear about your remarkable bull. Would you mind showing us where he is?" Jack led them to the barn, explaining the situation with halting words that grew more confident as he described Maverick's actions. The cameraman filmed as Dr. Fletcher detailed the bull's medical condition. "We estimate he endured over 300 scorpion stings," she explained. "For context, as few as 20 can be fatal to humans. And then to survive the flash flood and make his way home in that condition." She shook her head in amazement. "It's unprecedented." Jessica turned to Jack. "And these weren't all his calves he was protecting?" "Just one was his," Jack confirmed. "The others belonged to neighboring ranches, got swept into the canyon during the flood last week." "Why would he protect calves that weren't his own?" Jessica pressed, sensing the heart of the story. Jack looked at Maverick, their eyes meeting in that now familiar connection. "My son Lucas raised him from a calf, bottle-fed him when his mother died. Treated him like family." His voice roughened with emotion. "Guess he learned something about looking after others." As the interview continued, more vehicles arrived at the ranch. A representative from the Arizona Cattlemen's Association, veterinary specialists from the State University, even a film crew from a national wildlife program. The story of Maverick's bravery had captured imaginations far beyond the local community. By late afternoon, the barn had become the center of intense activity. And Maverick's condition, while still serious, had stabilized enough for Dr. Fletcher to express cautious optimism. The bull remained lying down, conserving his strength, but his eyes tracked the movement around him with alert awareness. "Mr. Whitman?" A man in a pressed shirt and tie approached, extending his business card. "I'm Daniel Hoffman from Western States Bank. Your loan officer called me about your situation." Jack tensed, expecting the worst. The foreclosure deadline was still days away, but with all the commotion, perhaps they'd decided to accelerate the process. "I've been authorized to offer you an extension on your loan," Hoffman continued, surprising Jack. "The bank recognizes the special circumstances and believes that given time, your operation can return to profitability." "What special circumstances?" Jack asked suspiciously. Hoffman gestured toward the barn, where Maverick lay surrounded by medical equipment. "Your bull has become something of a celebrity overnight. The bank sees potential value in that." He smiled slightly. "Plus, our regional president is a cattleman himself. He was quite moved by the story." Relief washed over Jack, tempered by wariness. "How long an extension?" 6 months, with the possibility of restructuring the entire loan after that period. Hoffman handed Jack a folder. "The details are in here. Take your time reviewing them." As Hoffman departed, Tom approached with another visitor, a well-dressed woman carrying a leather portfolio. "Jack, this is Rebecca Winters from the Western Wildlife Conservation Fund. She'd like to speak with you." The conversation that followed opened unexpected possibilities. The Conservation Fund had been searching for a compelling story to anchor their new education program about animal cognition and emotion. "We'd like to feature Maverick as the centerpiece of the campaign," Rebecca explained. "It would involve creating educational materials, possibly hosting limited tours here at the ranch. We can offer a substantial grant to support both Maverick's medical care and the necessary ranch modifications." Jack listened with growing amazement as she outlined a vision that would transform his struggling cattle operation into a specialized breeding program combined with an educational center. The financial support would be enough to save the ranch while ensuring Maverick received the best possible care. "Why?" Jack asked finally. "Why go to all this trouble for one bull?" Rebecca smiled. "Because stories change people, Mr. Whitman. And Maverick's story has the power to change how people think about animals, their intelligence, their capacity for sacrifice and love." She glanced toward the barn. "What he did challenges our fundamental understanding. That's worth preserving and sharing." As evening approached, the crowd at the ranch thinned. The medical team established a rotation for monitoring Maverick overnight, and Jack finally allowed himself to be persuaded to get some rest. Before heading to the house, he spent a quiet moment with Maverick. The bull's condition had improved enough that he was now sitting up, his breathing more regular. The hundreds of sting sites were being treated with a specialized salve, giving his white hide a peculiar mottled appearance. "Quite a day," Jack said softly, settling on the straw beside the massive animal. "Got the whole world beating a path to our door now." He placed a gentle hand on Maverick's shoulder. "Bank's giving us more time. Might even keep the ranch after all." Maverick shifted slightly, turning his head to look directly at Jack. Those dark, intelligent eyes seemed to hold a question. "The calves are all doing fine," Jack assured him, understanding the unspoken inquiry. "Doctor says they'll make a full recovery." He swallowed hard, emotion threatening to overcome him. "You did it, old friend. You saved them all." In the quiet of the barn, with only the distant sounds of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle from the fields, Jack Whitman found himself talking to Maverick as he once might have talked to Lucas or Sarah. He spoke of his fears, his regrets, the years of isolation following their deaths. And for the first time, he allowed himself to cry, deep, racking sobs that released 5 years of bottled grief. Through it all, Maverick remained present, his warm bulk pressed against Jack's side, his steady breathing a comforting rhythm in the gathering darkness. Later, as Jack finally rose to seek his own rest, Dr. Fletcher entered for the evening check. She paused, observing the tear tracks on the weathered rancher's face, but discreetly saying nothing. "He's family," Jack said simply, patting Maverick's flank as he passed. "Doctor." Fletcher nodded, her scientific skepticism continuing to evolve in the face of what she'd witnessed. "I believe you're right, Mr. Whitman." As Jack walked toward the house under a canopy of desert stars, he felt a curious lightness. The ranch that had become his prison of memories now hummed with new possibility. The bull that his son had loved now offered a path forward. For the first time in years, Jack Whitman went to sleep with hope for tomorrow. The following morning brought new challenges and opportunities. Dr. Fletcher's team had worked through the night, monitoring Maverick's condition and administering additional treatments. Their efforts were rewarded with steady improvement in the bull's vital signs, though recovery would be measured in weeks, not days. "The University Veterinary Hospital has offered their facilities," Dr. Fletcher informed Jack over coffee. "They have specialized equipment that could accelerate his recovery." Jack frowned. "Don't want him treated like a laboratory specimen." "I understand your concern," she replied, "but I've negotiated conditions. You would have unlimited access, and all treatment decisions would require your approval." She hesitated. "There's something else. His blood contains unusual properties we'd like to study, with your permission." "What kind of properties?" "His system appears to have developed some resistance to the scorpion venom. It's not complete immunity, but it's remarkable given the exposure level." Her eyes lit with scientific curiosity. "This could have implications for antivenom development. It could help people, Mr. Whitman." Jack considered this, remembering Lucas's passion for helping others. His son had volunteered at the local clinic, dreaming of becoming a veterinarian before the accident cut his life short. Would he want Maverick's suffering to potentially benefit others? "He'd have to come home after," Jack stipulated. "This is where he belongs, Doctor." Fletcher nodded. "Of course." Outside, the ranch continued its transformation. Volunteers from neighboring properties helped repair fences and clear debris from the storm. The media presence had grown, with reporters conducting interviews and filming Maverick from a respectful distance. Rebecca Winters and her team from the Conservation Fund were measuring the barn and surrounding areas, planning modifications for the educational center. Through it all, Jack found himself opening up in ways he hadn't for years. He shared stories of Lucas with the workers, recounting his son's bond with Maverick. He discussed ranch operations with fellow cattlemen, accepting their suggestions and offers of assistance. The isolation that had defined his existence since losing his family began to crack, allowing connection to seep through. By midday, the 5 rescued calves arrived from the veterinary clinic, transported in specially equipped trailers. Following Dr. Fletcher's suggestion, they were placed in a pen adjacent to Maverick's temporary quarters, where the bull could see them but they wouldn't disturb his recovery. The effect on Maverick was immediate and profound. Upon sensing the calves' presence, the bull struggled to his feet despite his weakened condition, moving to the edge of his enclosure to observe them. His demeanor visibly relaxed once he'd assured himself of their safety. "Remarkable," Dr. Fletcher murmured, documenting the interaction. "He's still protecting them, even now." As the sun reached its zenith, casting short shadows across the ranch yard, Tom arrived with news. "Weather Service says another storm system is developing. Could bring more flash flooding to the canyon area." Jack nodded, grateful that this time no lives hung in the balance. "We'll be ready." Looking around at the bustling activity, the medical team tending to Maverick, the construction crews beginning work on facility improvements, the calves safely corralled, Jack felt a sense of purpose he'd thought lost forever. In saving those calves, Maverick had saved something else, too. the heart of a broken man who had forgotten how to live. 3 days after Maverick's miraculous return, disaster struck without warning. Jack was reviewing renovation plans with Rebecca Winters when Dr. Fletcher burst into the ranch house, her typically composed demeanor shattered by urgency. "Maverick's crashing," she announced, already turning back toward the barn. "His kidneys are failing." Jack dropped the blueprints and followed at a run, his arthritic knee forgotten in the rush of fear. Inside the barn, a flurry of activity surrounded Maverick's still form. The massive bull lay on his side, his breathing shallow and labored, his dark eyes dulled with pain. "What happened?" Jack demanded, pushing through the team of veterinarians to reach Maverick's head. "He was improving yesterday." Dr. Mendez looked up from where he was hanging a new IV bag. "The cumulative effect of the venom. We thought we had it under control, but his system is shutting down. The damage to his kidneys was more extensive than we initially believed." Jack knelt beside Maverick, placing a weathered hand on the bull's broad forehead. "Fight, old friend," he murmured. "You've come too far to give up now." Dr. Fletcher approached, her face grave. "Mr. Whitman, we need to prepare you. The prognosis isn't good. The university hospital has offered to send their mobile treatment unit, but even with their advanced equipment—" She trailed off, the unspoken conclusion hanging in the air. "Do everything you can," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. "Whatever it costs." She nodded. "The transport team is already on their way. But I need to be honest with you. Moving him in this condition carries its own risks. He might not survive the journey." The weight of the decision settled on Jack's shoulders. Keep Maverick in familiar surroundings where he might find comfort in his final hours, or risk the journey that offered a slim chance of survival. Tom entered the barn, taking in the scene with a veteran ranger's practiced assessment. "University team called. They're 30 minutes out." Jack looked into Maverick's eyes, searching for guidance. The bull's gaze, though weakened, still held that uncanny intelligence. "What would you want, old friend?" he whispered. As if in answer, Maverick made a feeble attempt to rise, his massive legs pushing against the straw bedding before collapsing back. "He's still fighting," Jack said, straightening with new resolve. "We'll try the hospital." The next half-hour passed in tense preparation. The medical team stabilized Maverick as best they could, while others cleared a path from the barn to where the transport vehicle would park. Jack remained by the bull's side, speaking softly of better days to come, though his heart questioned whether those promises could be kept. When the university's mobile unit arrived, a specialized livestock ambulance equipped with advanced medical technology, the real challenge began. Moving Maverick's weakened, 2,000-pound frame without causing further damage required careful coordination and strength. "On my count," Dr. Fletcher directed, overseeing the team of 8 men positioned around the specially designed sling. 1, 2, 3, lift!" They raised Maverick inches off the ground, his massive body hanging in the reinforced fabric. A low moan escaped the bull, the sound cutting through Jack like a physical pain. "Easy," he urged, walking alongside as they began the slow journey toward the waiting transport. "Just a little further." Halfway to the vehicle, disaster struck. One of the volunteers stumbled on an uneven patch of ground, momentarily dropping his corner of the sling. The sudden shift in weight caused another man to lose his grip, and within seconds, the entire arrangement collapsed. Maverick crashed to the ground with a sickening thud, his full weight landing awkwardly on his right side. "No!" Jack shouted, rushing forward as the medical team converged on the fallen bull. Dr. Fletcher pushed through, dropping to her knees beside Maverick. "Get the emergency kit," she ordered one of her assistants. "I think he's punctured a lung." The next moments passed in a blur of frantic activity. Oxygen was administered, emergency medications injected, desperate measures taken to stabilize the critically injured animal. Through it all, Jack remained by Maverick's head, murmuring encouragement, his weathered hands gentle on the bull's face. "Don't you give up," he urged, his voice breaking. "You hear me, Maverick? Don't you dare give up." But with each passing minute, the bull's breathing grew more labored, his once bright eyes dimming. The medical team worked with increasing desperation, their faces grim with the knowledge that they were losing the battle. "Jack," Tom said gently, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder, "maybe it's time to—" "No!" Jack cut him off fiercely. "He didn't give up on those calves. I won't give up on him." Dr. Fletcher looked up from her examination, her expression softening with compassion. "Mr. Whitman, he's suffering. His lung is collapsed, and the fall likely caused internal bleeding. Even if we get him to the hospital now—" The unfinished sentence hung in the air. Jack looked into Maverick's eyes, seeing the pain there, the struggle for each breath. The bull that had stood for days protecting others, enduring hundreds of painful stings, surviving a flash flood against all odds. That magnificent animal was dying before his eyes. "Can you—" Jack's voice faltered. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Can you make him comfortable? Take away the pain?" Dr. Fletcher nodded solemnly. "Yes, we can do that." "I want to be alone with him first," Jack said. The medical team and onlookers respectfully withdrew, creating a small circle of privacy around man and bull in the middle of the ranch yard. Jack knelt beside Maverick, stroking the broad white forehead now dampened with sweat from the bull's exertions. "You've done enough," Jack said softly, echoing the words he'd spoken in the canyon. More than enough. Memories washed over him. Lucas at 16, proudly showing off the blue ribbon Maverick had won at the county fair. Sarah laughing as the young bull playfully chased butterflies in the spring pasture. Quiet evenings after their deaths, when Maverick's solid presence had been Jack's only comfort. "You're the last piece of them I had," Jack whispered, tears flowing freely now. "Don't know how to say goodbye again." Maverick's breathing hitched, growing more irregular. With tremendous effort, the bull lifted his massive head slightly, enough to rest it against Jack's knee in a gesture so gentle, so deliberate, that several, watching from a distance, later swore they'd witnessed something beyond animal instinct. Jack bent forward, resting his forehead against Maverick's. "Thank you," he murmured, "for everything." He beckoned to Dr. Fletcher, who approached with a loaded syringe. "This will ease his pain," she explained softly. "He'll feel peaceful, then sleep." Jack nodded, unable to speak. He continued stroking Maverick's head as the medication was administered, murmuring words of comfort as the bull's breathing gradually slowed. "Lucas is waiting for you," Jack whispered. "He'll take good care of you now." The bull's dark eyes fixed on Jack's one last time, holding that connection until they slowly closed. The massive chest rose and fell once more, then stilled. Maverick was gone. Jack remained kneeling beside the bull's body, one hand still resting on the broad white forehead, grief etching new lines into his weathered face. Around him the gathered crowd stood in respectful silence, many wiping away their own tears at witnessing the powerful bond between man and animal. Tom was the first to approach, kneeling beside his old friend. "I'm sorry, Jack," he said simply. Dr. Fletcher joined them, her scientific detachment completely abandoned. "He was extraordinary," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "What he did, what he understood, it was beyond anything I've ever witnessed." Jack nodded, unable to speak. The loss felt as raw, as devastating as losing Lucas and Sarah. In many ways, Maverick had been his last connection to them, and now that connection was severed. News of Maverick's death spread quickly through the gathered crowd and beyond. The reporters who had come to document a miraculous survival now recorded a different kind of story, one of sacrifice, courage, and a bond that transcended the usual boundaries between humans and animals. As afternoon faded into evening, preparations were made to move Maverick's body. Jack initially resisted, not ready for that final separation, but eventually agreed when Dr. Fletcher explained the necessity. "We can place him in the cool storage facility at the university until you decide on final arrangements," she suggested gently. Jack nodded, his mind too numb with grief to consider such decisions. He watched as Maverick's massive form was carefully loaded onto a flatbed trailer covered respectfully with a clean tarp. As the vehicle pulled away, Jack felt something vital leaving with it, the last ember of hope that had rekindled in his heart over the past days. That night, alone in the ranch house that once again felt empty and silent, Jack sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey and the photo of Lucas with young Maverick. The plans for the educational center, the bank's loan extension, the media attention, none of it mattered now. The heart of it all was gone. "Shouldn't have let them move him," he said aloud to the empty room, pouring another drink with a shaking hand. "Should have just kept him comfortable here." Outside, a storm gathered, thunder rolling across the desert landscape. Jack thought of the flash flood, of Maverick standing firm against the torrent. Even in death, the bull had shown more courage than Jack felt capable of mustering now. A knock at the door startled him from his dark thoughts. Tom stood on the porch, rain dripping from his hat. "Figured you shouldn't be alone tonight," he said simply. Jack stepped back silently, allowing his old friend to enter. Tom removed his wet jacket and hat, then took a seat at the table, accepting the glass Jack pushed toward him. "Feels like losing Lucas all over again," Jack admitted after a long silence. Tom nodded. "Maverick was special. Everybody saw that." "Not everybody," Jack said bitterly. "To the bank, he was just collateral. To most folks, just livestock." "Not anymore," Tom countered. "You saw those people today. They understood what he was." They sat in companionable silence, the bottle between them growing emptier as the storm intensified outside. Eventually, Tom spoke again, choosing his words carefully. "What are you going to do now, Jack? About the ranch? The conservation project?" Jack stared into his glass. "Don't see the point anymore. Maverick was the heart of it all." "Maybe," Tom acknowledged. "But what he did still matters. Those calves are alive because of him. People all over the country are talking about him, thinking differently about animals because of his story." He leaned forward, meeting Jack's gaze. "That's a legacy worth protecting, don't you think?" Before Jack could respond, his phone rang, an unusual occurrence at this late hour. He answered warily, listening to the voice on the other end with growing confusion. "That was Dr. Fletcher," he said, after hanging up, his expression bewildered. "Says they found something when they were examining him. Wants me to come to the university first thing tomorrow." "Did she say what they found?" Tom asked. Jack shook his head. "Just that it was important, that I needed to see it myself." He rubbed his face wearily. "Probably some scientific thing they want to study. Not sure I'm up for that conversation yet." Tom nodded understandingly. "Want me to go with you?" "Yeah," Jack said after a moment. "I'd appreciate that." They finished their drinks in silence, the rain beating a steady rhythm on the roof. Jack's mind churned with questions about what the doctors might have discovered, but exhaustion eventually overcame curiosity. When Tom offered to take the couch, Jack didn't protest, grateful not to face the night alone with his grief. As he finally lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Jack thought of Maverick standing guard over those trapped calves, enduring pain and danger to protect them. There had been something profound in that act, something that transcended ordinary animal behavior and touched on deeper truths about courage, sacrifice, and love. "What were you trying to show us, old friend?" Jack whispered into the darkness. "What were you trying to teach us?" The answer, if it existed, remained elusive as Jack finally drifted into troubled sleep, the image of Maverick's dark, intelligent eyes following him into dreams of loss and remembrance. Morning arrived with merciful clarity after the storm, the desert air washed clean and fragrant with creosote. Jack moved through his routine mechanically. Coffee, toast he couldn't bring himself to eat, fresh clothes that still somehow smelled of the barn and faintly of Maverick. Tom waited patiently, understanding the ritual of grief, offering quiet company rather than hollow reassurances. The drive to the University Veterinary Center passed in silence, each mile increasing Jack's apprehension about what Dr. Fletcher might have discovered. When they finally arrived at the imposing medical complex on the outskirts of Tucson, Jack hesitated in the parking lot, suddenly reluctant to face whatever waited inside. "Whatever it is," Tom said gently, "we'll handle it together." Dr. Fletcher met them in the lobby, her expression unreadable but her eyes holding an intensity that immediately put Jack on alert. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Whitman. There's something you need to see." She led them through a maze of sterile corridors into a restricted area marked Large Animal Treatment Center. Security badges were scanned, doors unlocked, each barrier increasing Jack's sense of foreboding. Why all this security for examination of a deceased animal? "Before I show you," Dr. Fletcher said, pausing outside a final set of doors, "I need to explain something. When we brought Maverick here last night, our standard protocol includes comprehensive scanning and preliminary tissue examination, even in cases where—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Even in cases where humane euthanasia has occurred." Jack flinched slightly at the clinical reference to Maverick's death. "Get to the point, Doctor. During the initial examination, we detected very faint cardiac activity." She held up a hand as Jack started forward. "Please, let me finish. It wasn't a normal heartbeat, more like sporadic electrical impulses. Normally, this would be dismissed as post-mortem muscle activity, but given Maverick's extraordinary resilience, our team proceeded with emergency measures." Jack stared at her, disbelief warring with a dangerous flicker of hope. "What are you saying?" Dr. Fletcher took a deep breath. "Maverick is alive, Mr. Whitman." The world seemed to tilt beneath Jack's feet. Tom steadied him with a firm hand on his shoulder as Dr. Fletcher continued. "It's unprecedented. His core temperature had dropped. Respiration was undetectable in the field. By every standard measure, he was clinically deceased, but something in his system, possibly related to the unusual properties we noted in his blood, created a state of profound hibernation that protected his brain from damage." "Where is he?" Jack demanded, finding his voice at last. "I need to see him." Dr. Fletcher nodded, pushing open the final doors to reveal a large treatment bay. In the center, surrounded by medical equipment and monitoring devices, lay Maverick. The bull was connected to multiple IV lines and breathing apparatus, but unmistakably alive. His chest rising and falling with slow, regular breaths. "My God," Tom whispered beside him. Jack approached slowly, afraid that speaking or moving too quickly might shatter this impossible reality. Maverick's eyes were closed, his massive form unnaturally still apart from the breathing, but the monitors showed a steady heartbeat. Alive. Against all odds, against science and reason, Maverick was alive. "He's heavily sedated," Dr. Fletcher explained, following Jack to the bull's side. "The trauma to his lung required surgical intervention. We've repaired the damage, but recovery will be a long process." Jack placed a trembling hand on Maverick's shoulder, feeling the warmth and solid presence that he'd thought lost forever. "Will he—" I mean, is there brain damage? The question caught in his throat. We won't know until he regains consciousness, Dr. Fletcher answered honestly. But preliminary neurological tests show promising activity. There's reason for cautious optimism. A young veterinarian approached with a tablet displaying charts and images. Dr. Fletcher, the latest blood work results. She reviewed the data, her expression shifting from professional interest to amazement. These numbers have improved significantly in just the last 2 hours. His system is clearing the remaining venom far more efficiently than should be possible. Jack only half listened to the technical discussion that followed, his attention fixed on Maverick. The bull's ears twitched slightly at the sound of Jack's voice, a small movement, but enough to send a surge of hope through him. "He hears me," Jack said, interrupting the doctors. "Look." Dr. Fletcher observed as Jack spoke again, and Maverick's ear flickered in response. "Remarkable. Auditory recognition suggests higher brain function remains intact." She made a notation on the tablet. "This supports our theory about the protective mechanism in his blood." "In English, Doc," Tom requested. "Something in Maverick's blood chemistry appears to have protected his brain and vital organs during clinical death," she explained. "It's similar to how certain animals survive extreme conditions through specialized hibernation. But we've never documented anything like this in bovines." Jack stroked Maverick's broad forehead, overwhelmed by the second chance that had been granted. "When will he wake up?" "We're reducing the sedation gradually. It could be hours, possibly longer." Dr. Fletcher hesitated. "Mr. Whitman, there's something else you should know. What we're discovering about Maverick's unique physiology could have significant implications for medical research." Jack tensed. "What kind of research?" "The compounds in his blood that allowed him to survive both massive envenomation and clinical death could potentially lead to breakthroughs in human emergency medicine." She chose her next words carefully. "Several pharmaceutical companies have already expressed interest in funding comprehensive studies." "You're talking about using him as a lab animal," Jack said flatly. "Not at all," Dr. Fletcher countered quickly. "Any research would involve blood samples only, collected humanely during his normal treatment. Maverick himself would remain under your care, with all medical expenses covered by the research grants." Jack fell silent, considering the implications. The financial support would ensure Maverick received the best possible care while potentially helping others. It seemed like the kind of purpose Lucas would have approved of for his beloved bull. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Right now, I just want to focus on him getting better." Dr. Fletcher nodded understandingly. "Of course. Why don't I give you some time alone with him? The nurse will be monitoring his vitals from the station, but you'll have privacy." As the medical team withdrew, Jack pulled up a stool beside Maverick's head. Tom clapped a hand on his shoulder. "This is a miracle, Jack. No other word for it." "Yeah," Jack agreed softly. "Seems like Maverick's not done teaching us lessons yet." Tom smiled. "I'll grab us some coffee. Take your time." Alone with Maverick, Jack found himself talking as naturally as he had in the barn, sharing thoughts and memories in a quiet, steady stream. He told the bull about the community's response, about the calves' recovery, about the plans for the ranch that now might come to fruition after all. "Lucas would be proud of you," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. "Sarah, too. They always saw something special in you." He leaned closer, his weathered face near Maverick's ear. "I see it now, too, old friend. Took me long enough." Whether it was coincidence or response, Maverick's ear twitched again, and the monitors showed a slight increase in heart rate. Jack continued talking, encouraged by these small signs of awareness. Hours passed, with Tom occasionally bringing coffee or updates from the various people who had gathered in the waiting area, news crews, neighbors, even Bill Foster and his family. By mid-afternoon, Dr. Fletcher returned with news. "We've further reduced the sedation. If he's going to regain consciousness naturally, it should happen within the next few hours. Jack nodded, refusing to leave Maverick's side despite Tom's suggestions that he take a break. As the afternoon light slanted through the high windows, casting golden rectangles across the treatment bay floor, Jack found himself dozing, head propped on his hand. A soft nudge against his arm jerked him awake. For a moment he thought Tom had returned, but the room was empty save for Maverick, whose dark eye was now open, regarding Jack with that familiar intelligence. "Maverick?" Jack whispered, scarcely daring to believe. The bull's massive head shifted slightly on the padding, his gaze never leaving Jack's face. It was the barest of movements, but to Jack it meant everything. He hit the call button for the medical team, then leaned close, placing his hand on Maverick's broad forehead. "Welcome back, old friend. You had us mighty worried." Dr. Fletcher rushed in, followed by several team members. They checked monitors, performed quick assessments, their expressions shifting from professional concern to amazement. "His neurological responses are remarkably strong," Dr. Fletcher reported, shining a light briefly into Maverick's eye. "Pupillary response normal, voluntary muscle control returning." She straightened, smiling genuinely for the first time since Jack had met her. "It appears we have a full recovery in progress." The news spread rapidly through the facility and beyond. By evening, the story of Maverick's resurrection had been picked up by national media, adding another extraordinary chapter to the already remarkable tale. Jack's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, well-wishers, and opportunists seeking to capitalize on Maverick's fame. Through it all, Jack remained by the bull's side, grounding himself in the simple reality of Maverick's survival when the outside attention became overwhelming. Each hour brought visible improvement, the bull lifting his head, shifting position, showing increasing awareness of his surroundings. 3 days later, under careful supervision, Maverick was helped to his feet for the first time since the accident. His massive legs trembled with the effort, but he stood tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. The medical team documented every moment, capturing what Dr. Fletcher called one of the most remarkable recoveries in veterinary history. Jack watched with pride and wonder as Maverick took his first steps around the treatment bay, moving slowly but with determination. The bull paused beside Jack, lowering his massive head to bump gently against the rancher's chest, a gesture so deliberate, so clearly affectionate, that even the most skeptical observers fell silent. "The bond between them is extraordinary," Dr. Fletcher murmured to a colleague. "It challenges everything we thought we knew about animal cognition and emotional capacity." While Maverick's physical recovery progressed, decisions loomed about his future. Dr. Fletcher presented Jack with a formal proposal for the research program, outlining the potential benefits and strictly limited impact on Maverick himself. "The compounds in his blood could lead to breakthroughs in trauma medicine," she explained. "Treatments that could save human lives in cases of severe injury or toxic exposure. All we would need are regular blood samples, which can be collected during his routine checkups." Jack studied the proposal, thinking of Lucas's dream to help others. And the money from this research. It would go toward his care and the educational center at the ranch? Exactly. The funding package is quite substantial. Dr. Fletcher hesitated. "There's something else, Mr. Whitman. The university would like to establish a specialized veterinary research fellowship in Maverick's name, focusing on animal cognition and emotion. Your ranch would serve as the primary field site." The idea of Lucas's beloved bull contributing to scientific understanding while helping others seemed fitting, a legacy that honored both the bull's extraordinary actions and his son's compassionate spirit. "I think Lucas would have liked that," Jack said softly. "He always believed Maverick was special." As Maverick continued to recover, Jack spent hours each day at the facility, often bringing updates about the ranch. Tom had overseen the completion of initial renovations, transforming the old barn into a comfortable recovery space for Maverick's eventual return. The 5 rescued calves were thriving, frequently visiting the fence line nearest to the barn as if looking for their protector. On the 7th day after Maverick's awakening, Dr. Fletcher approached Jack with an unexpected question. The calves that Maverick protected, would it be possible to bring one of them here? I have a theory about his recovery that I'd like to test. Jack arranged for the light-colored calf, Maverick's biological offspring, to be transported to the facility the following day. When the young animal was led into the treatment bay, Maverick's reaction was immediate and profound. The bull raised his head sharply, nostrils flaring as he caught the calf's scent. He struggled to his feet with more energy than he'd shown in days, moving toward the calf with clear purpose. The medical team watched in amazement as bull and calf touched noses, Maverick gently examining the younger animal as if checking for injuries. The calf, initially nervous in the strange environment, relaxed visibly under Maverick's attention, eventually settling beside the larger animal with complete trust. "His vital signs have improved dramatically," one of the technicians reported, checking the monitors. "Heart rate stronger, respiratory function increased." Dr. Fletcher nodded, making notes. "Just as I suspected, the presence of the calf he protected provides powerful motivation for recovery." She turned to Jack. "This connection, this sense of responsibility, it's driving his healing process." Jack watched the interaction with growing emotion. "He needs purpose," he said simply. "We all do." In that moment, observing the powerful bond between Maverick and the calf he had risked everything to protect, Jack understood something fundamental about his own path forward. Like Maverick, he had been existing without purpose since losing his family. And like Maverick, he needed to find meaning in protecting and nurturing others. The realization settled over him with the weight of truth. The educational center, the research program, the opportunity to share Maverick's story with the world, these weren't just projects to save the ranch. They were a chance to honor Lucas and Sarah by embracing the values they had lived by: compassion, courage, and the belief that every life had purpose. As if sensing Jack's thoughts, Maverick raised his massive head, his dark eyes meeting the ranchers with that uncanny understanding. In that silent exchange, something passed between man and bull, a recognition of shared experience, shared loss, and now shared purpose. "We're going to be all right," Jack said softly, placing his hand on Maverick's broad forehead. "Both of us." The bull lowered his head in what almost seemed like agreement, then turned his attention back to the calf beside him, the future he had fought so hard to protect. 1 year later, Jack Whitman stood on the newly built observation deck overlooking the eastern pasture of what was now officially known as the Maverick Ranch Wildlife and Education Center. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert landscape, illuminating the small group of visitors already gathering at the main entrance. Soon, Tom would lead them on the day's first tour, sharing the extraordinary story that had transformed a struggling cattle operation into one of Arizona's most unique educational attractions. In the pasture below, Maverick grazed contentedly among his small herd. The massive white bull moved with only the slightest hint of stiffness, a remarkable recovery given the prognosis he had faced. Beside him, always close, was the light-colored calf, no longer a calf but a growing yearling that still sought his father's protection and guidance. "There you are," called a familiar voice. "Doctor." Abigail Fletcher climbed the steps to join Jack at the railing, her formerly severe appearance softened by the casual ranch attire she now wore several days a week as the center's research director. "The university team just arrived. They're setting up in the lab." Jack nodded. Today marked the beginning of the formal research program that would study the compounds in Maverick's blood, a project that had already attracted international attention in medical and veterinary circles. The monthly blood draws were a small price to pay for what scientists believed could be breakthrough treatments for venom exposure and trauma care. "He's having a good day," Jack observed, watching Maverick's confident movements across the pasture. "Doesn't even seem to mind that storm rolling in from the east." Abigail, she had long since asked Jack to drop the formal Dr. Fletcher, smiled at the observation. "His weather sensitivity has been remarkably accurate. The ranch hands are already saying they don't need forecasts anymore, just Maverick reports." The easy conversation between them reflected the profound changes of the past year. Abigail had moved from skeptic to believer, her rigorous scientific mind gradually accepting that animals like Maverick possessed forms of intelligence and emotional capacity that defied conventional understanding. Her research papers on the subject had generated both acclaim and controversy in academic circles, but she stood firmly by her observations. "The documentary crew wants to do final interviews this afternoon," she reminded him. "They're hoping to get some footage of you and Maverick together for the closing segment." Jack nodded, though public speaking still didn't come naturally to him. The National Geographic documentary about Maverick's story was nearly complete, the culmination of months of filming at the ranch. The international attention had been overwhelming at times, but Jack had gradually grown accustomed to sharing Maverick's story with the world. "Mr. Whitman?" A young ranch hand approached respectfully. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a call for you at the main office." "Something about the school group from Phoenix?" Jack excused himself, following the young man down to the ranch office that now hummed with the activity of a full-time staff. The transformation of the property over the past year still amazed him. The new educational buildings, the veterinary research facility, the visitor center with its engaging exhibits about animal cognition and behavior. All of it funded by a combination of research grants, conservation partnerships, and donations that had poured in from around the world after Maverick's story went viral. The Phoenix school visit was a special one, a group of children from an underprivileged area who had raised money for the trip by selling handmade items featuring Maverick's image. Their teacher was on the phone now, concerned about the approaching storm. "The weather should clear by the time you arrive," Jack assured her. "But we've got indoor facilities if needed. These kids have worked too hard to miss out." After completing the call, Jack paused at his desk, his gaze falling on the framed photographs that now lined the wall. There was Lucas at 16 with young Maverick, Sarah at their last anniversary celebration, and newer images, Maverick standing protectively over the rescued calves during their reunion at the ranch, Jack and Tom receiving the Governor's Conservation Award, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new education center. So much had changed in a year. The foreclosure notices were long gone, replaced by financial stability and purpose. The isolation that had defined Jack's existence after losing his family had given way to meaningful connections with staff, researchers, and the steady stream of visitors drawn by Maverick's story. "Jack?" Tom appeared in the doorway dressed in the ranger-style uniform of the center's tour guides. "First group's ready when you are." This had become their routine, Jack personally welcoming each tour group, sharing the beginning of Maverick's story before Tom led them through the facility. It was important to Jack that visitors heard the personal element of the tale from him directly, understanding that this was more than just an unusual animal behavior case. The morning group consisted of about 20 visitors, ranging from fascinated children to elderly couples who had traveled specifically to see the hero bull they'd read about. Jack greeted them in the new visitor center, standing beside the dramatic photo display of Maverick in the scorpion-filled canyon. "Folks often ask me what made Maverick different," Jack began, his once awkward public speaking now flowing naturally after countless tellings. "Why did this particular bull choose to protect calves that weren't even his own, enduring hundreds of painful stings and risking his life? Was it instinct, intelligence, or something more?" He paused, meeting the eyes of his attentive audience. "The truth is, I don't have a scientific answer for you. Dr. Fletcher and her team might give you the biological perspective later, but what I can tell you is what I witnessed. An animal that made choices based on something beyond self-preservation, choices that showed courage, sacrifice, and what I can only describe as love. The tour proceeded through the educational exhibits, eventually leading to the highlight, a visit to the special observation area where guests could safely view Maverick and his herd. As always, Jack stepped away during this portion, allowing Tom to handle the explanations while he took a private moment by the memorial garden they'd established for Lucas and Sarah. The small, peaceful space featured native desert plants surrounding a simple stone marker. Jack had resisted making it about his personal loss, instead dedicating it to all who teach us about courage and love, human and animal alike. Still, this was where he felt closest to his son and wife, often imagining their pride in what Maverick's story had accomplished. "Your boy was right all along," Jack said softly to the marker, a habit he'd developed over the months. "Maverick was special. Wish you could see what he's done, who he's helped." The research based on Maverick's blood had already led to promising developments in emergency medicine. The educational programs at the ranch had touched thousands of visitors, changing perspectives on animal cognition. Perhaps most meaningful to Jack were the children who came through. Young people like Lucas had been, developing a deeper understanding of and respect for the animals in their care. By afternoon, the promised storm had indeed passed, leaving the desert air fresh and the light golden as the documentary crew set up for final filming. They positioned Jack near the pasture fence, where Maverick predictably approached, drawn, as always, to the rancher's familiar presence. "Just talk to him naturally," the director suggested. "Pretend we're not here." Jack smiled slightly at the instruction. Talking to Maverick had become as natural as breathing over the past year, their connection a daily reminder that communication transcended conventional boundaries. As the cameras rolled, Jack leaned against the fence, Maverick's massive white form approaching with that distinctive, deliberate gait. The bull stopped before him, lowering his head in what had become their customary greeting. "Been quite a year, old friend," Jack said, reaching out to stroke the broad white forehead. "Never thought we'd end up here, did we? You with your fan club, me giving tours." Maverick's dark eyes held that same intelligent awareness that had first unsettled Jack in the canyon. The bull pressed his head against Jack's hand, a gesture that still moved the rancher deeply each time it occurred. "Lucas always said you understood more than most people gave you credit for," Jack continued, the cameras forgotten as he spoke from the heart. "Took me longer to see it. Seems like I've spent most of my life catching up to what my boy knew instinctively." Maverick shifted slightly, his attention moving beyond Jack to something in the distance. Jack turned to follow his gaze, spotting the school bus from Phoenix arriving at the main entrance. The bull's extraordinary awareness of newcomers to the ranch had become legendary among the staff. "Those kids have been looking forward to meeting you for months," Jack told him. "Made artwork of you, wrote stories. You've become quite the hero to them." As if understanding, Maverick moved along the fence line in the direction of the visitor center, his yearling son following closely. The documentary director signaled excitedly to his cameraman to capture this seemingly purposeful movement. Jack watched with quiet pride as Maverick positioned himself near the viewing area, effectively placing himself on display for the arriving children. The bull that had once been valued only for breeding now served a different purpose, inspiring young minds, advancing medical research, and demonstrating the complex emotional lives of animals many had dismissed as simple livestock. Later, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Jack sat alone on the porch of the ranch house, the one space that remained private amid the transformed property. The day's visitors and film crew had departed, the research team had completed their work, and a peaceful quiet had settled over the land. In the pasture visible from his porch, Maverick had gathered his small herd, the protective instinct that had amazed the world now expressed in his daily watchfulness over his family group. The light of the setting sun burnished his white hide to gold, creating an almost ethereal image against the backdrop of red desert landscape. Bill Foster's truck appeared at the end of the driveway, a now regular evening occurrence. The neighboring rancher, who had once offered to buy Maverick for slaughter, had become one of the center's strongest supporters, his perspective transformed by witnessing the bull's extraordinary story. "Evening, Jack," Bill called, climbing the porch steps with a brown paper bag in hand. "Brought some of Martha's apple pie. She insisted." Jack welcomed him with a nod, pouring coffee from the pot he kept ready for such visits. These evening conversations had become an unexpected pleasure. Ranchers discussing the day's events, sharing wisdom earned through decades working the land. "Had those Phoenix school kids today," Jack mentioned as they settled into the porch chairs. "One little boy asked if Maverick was magic." Bill chuckled. "What'd you tell him?" Jack smiled, watching the bull in the distance. "Told him Maverick just reminds us of something we forget sometimes, that courage and love aren't just human traits." They sat in companionable silence as darkness gradually claimed the landscape, stars appearing in the vast desert sky. In the pasture, Maverick had settled his herd for the night, his distinctive white form still visible in the gathering dusk. "Year ago today, wasn't it?" Bill asked quietly. "When you found him in that canyon?" Jack nodded, the memory still vivid. The shock of discovering Maverick standing guard over those trapped calves, enduring scorpion stings to protect them. "Never imagined where it would lead. Changed a lot of minds, that bull of yours, mine included." Bill took a sip of coffee. "Used to think they were just livestock. Now I catch myself wondering what my cattle are thinking." The admission from the old-school rancher highlighted the ripple effect of Maverick's story. How one animal's extraordinary actions had shifted perspectives far beyond the boundaries of the Whitman Ranch. As night settled fully over the desert, Jack reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of losing Lucas and Sarah would never completely fade, but it had been transformed through Maverick's story into something meaningful, a legacy that honored their values and touched countless lives. "Think Lucas knew?" Bill asked suddenly. "How special that bull was." Jack smiled in the darkness, remembering his son's words from years ago. "He knew. Told me so the day he brought Maverick home as a calf. This one's different, Dad," he said. "This one understands things." The distant sound of Maverick's distinctive low call drifted across the ranch, a sound that once signaled only breeding season but now seemed to carry different meanings that Jack had learned to interpret over their shared journey. "Saying good night," Jack translated with a slight smile. Bill nodded, accepting this without skepticism, another measure of how perspectives had changed. "Martha wants to bring her church group next week. Says everyone's been asking about the miracle bull." Jack had long since stopped correcting people who used such terms. Science could explain much of what had happened. Dr. Fletcher's research had identified unique compounds in Maverick's blood that had protected him from venom and aided his remarkable recovery. But Jack had come to believe that some aspects of Maverick's story transcended simple explanation. The choices the bull had made, the connections he had formed, the lives he had touched. "You know," Bill said thoughtfully, "my granddaddy used to say that sometimes the good Lord works through the most unexpected messengers." Jack nodded, finding truth in the old-fashioned sentiment. Whether through divine design or the complex wonders of nature, Maverick had indeed delivered a powerful message about courage, sacrifice, and the deep connections possible between all living beings. As Bill departed with promises to return the following evening, Jack remained on the porch, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the desert. The once struggling ranch had become a place of purpose and meaning, drawing people from around the world to learn from one extraordinary bull's story. Jack thought of Lucas and Sarah, of the life they had built here, and the values they had cherished. He thought of Maverick, who had carried those values forward in ways no one could have imagined, and he thought of his own journey from isolated grief to renewed purpose. "Thank you," he whispered to the night, his words meant for them all, family lost and found, and the remarkable bull that had bridged the two. In the pasture, as if hearing the unspoken sentiment, Maverick raised his head briefly toward the house before settling back with his herd, a guardian still on watch, still protecting what mattered most, a living embodiment of courage and love that had changed hearts and minds across the world, starting with one grieving rancher who had learned to see with new eyes. Friends, Maverick's story reminds us that it's never too late for a second chapter. Like Jack Whitman, many of us have faced profound loss and wondered if our best days were behind us. We've felt the weight of grief, financial worries, and isolation, but this remarkable bull shows us that courage and love can emerge from unexpected places, bringing new purpose when we least expect it. Just as Maverick stood guard over those calves despite hundreds of painful stings, there's something within each of us that remains undefeated by life's hardships. Jack found healing not by escaping his pain, but by embracing a new mission that honored what he'd lost. His transformation from isolated grief to meaningful connection mirrors a journey many of us are navigating. What unexpected blessings have appeared in your life when you thought all hope was lost? How has an animal companion helped you through your darkest days? Please share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, like Maverick, you still have important work to do, people to inspire, and love to give. Your greatest chapter may still be unwritten.